There's been a number of questions about the annotation assignment, so I'm sending you this short video that goes through the questions and may give you some help in finding the answers. So remember, the focus of this course, the reason that we had divided it up between tutorial and class, is because there's so much variation in the rules for writing that you can primarily find out in your journals. And so what I want you to do is simply look at one journal, although in reality you would need to look at a bunch of articles, and look to see how they're written, what kind of organization they have. So these questions were really designed as a aid to help you think about what to look for in an article, so that you become, when you read, you're not only reading for the content of the article, you're reading to understand how the article is written. So the first two questions we've covered a lot. The first one is the topic of the paper, which you should be able to look at in the first sentence and why it's important. And the second question addresses the contradiction that's in the problem, and that's important. So the contradiction should have two parts. The first part is, what is it that the goal of the research, that is, what is it that's supposed to be obtained? And then there's often you'll see the word however, and that signals this is the current state. The third and fourth questions also deal with the problem that the paper is going to address. The first is, what is the significance of the problem? Therefore, what is the problem important? And the fourth question is, what is the criteria? That is, what's wrong with the current state? And that should include what the paper is going to address. So when you talk about the criteria, you're laying out the goals of your own research. Question 5 and 6 kind of go back and they expand upon what you've already said. So you might look in the literature review for what are the issues that are going to be addressed. They should be in, if there's a very brief literature in the introduction of the paper, or it might be in related work or somewhere else in the paper. That's one of the things you're going to look at. So 5 and 6 really deal with maybe the expands on the issues. And again, the idea is that you're laying back out the issues at the beginning, and then you're developing them through the introduction. Question 7, you want to look more detailed at how the literature is used. Remember, we've discussed there are various reasons for why using the literature. So you're trying to just look at all of the different reasons that you may find in the literature. It could be to support questions, it could be to look at methodology, it could be to show that your relationship is supported by previous research, and so a number of issues that come up, and that's what you address with the various uses the literature has. Questions 8 and 9, you really need to make your own judgments about. These are questions that you often see in peer review analysis about methodology, results, discussion. Are they appropriate? And one of the things you might want to look at is how well connected they are to the way the problem has been stated in the introduction. But these are questions you have to make judgments on yourselves. Questions 10 and 11, I guess question 10 particularly looks at how the conclusion of the paper is written. Now, not all papers have conclusions, but do they have limitations on the paper? Are there specific suggestions that the authors make at the end of the paper? And that's somewhat related to question 11. Question 11 is how does the paper address its audience? So if it's primarily a research audience, for example, it might suggest more research. But if they're looking at multiple audience, they may say something to the other audience, like what the policy is. In my field, you almost always have to have a conclusion where you look at what are the pedagogical implications of your research. So this, again, if you can't answer any of the questions, don't worry about it. And if you have any other questions about this assignment, please let me know.